How much to spend on a house? Now there's a loaded question. So I want to start by acknowledging what a weird housing market we're in at the moment. The pandemic kicked off an unprecedented migration in the United States, fueled by a perfect storm of untethered work locations, historically low interest rates, and a glut of cash in the pockets of most Americans. And all that cash, well, yeah, it was coming from everywhere. There was a rising stock market, incomes increased rapidly due to low participation in the labor market, and the government was literally sending checks to almost everyone. And all the while, we were stuck at home with no way to spend our money for about a year or two. The bottom line is it's a really tough time to buy a house, but what I really want to emphasize in this video is that tough times actually call for a higher degree of scrutiny over the decision to buy a home, not less. Buying a home is not a decision you should take lightly because a poor choice could wreck your finances for years to come. Let's start out by talking about how much house we should buy. Now naturally, when most people begin inquiring about the possibility of buying a new home, they'll ask themselves, how much house can I afford? Better yet, you'll probably go to Google and do a quick web search in order to answer that question. And I was curious how much house Google thinks I can afford, so I ran my income through their mortgage affordability calculator. And I was pleased to see that Google actually suggested a mortgage amount with a monthly payment that represents about 30% of our household income. In fact, 30% is the highest amount I recommend anyone commit to a monthly housing payment. That's renting or buying, and that includes a car payment wrapped into it as well. We'll come back to that in a bit, but first here's the thing. Most Americans are spending far more than 30% of their income on a house. According to the Council for Community and Economic Research, the average monthly mortgage payment is $2,390 a month, or $28,680 annually. Now, meanwhile, the median household income is just below $76,000 annually. $28,680 of housing expense is 37.7% of $76,000. Now you might think 7.7% of income really isn't that big of a deal. If so, please feel free to mail me 7.7% of your income since you couldn't care less about it. But for the rest of you that want to understand why 30% is the top of the mark, let me try to explain. First, it would be incredibly fair to characterize the American economy as consumer-driven. In fact, it would be a bit of an understatement. Culturally, Americans spend almost every dollar we manage to earn. Now, I'm generalizing, but for the most part, if Americans have an extra dollar lying around, we have a talent for finding a way to spend it. I'm not saying that to shame anyone, but it's important to understand that mindset because it can have debilitating effects on our finances if we don't keep it in check and practice a little discipline. Now, to illustrate this point, I researched how much the average American household spends on just 6 basic categories each year. That's housing, taxes, cars, groceries or food, utilities, and fuel. I've already pointed out that the annual median household income is about $76,000. Now, clearly there's a problem here, and I haven't even included the $4,000 spent annually on insurance, $3,500 on entertainment, $2,000 on clothes, and $1,700 spent each year on cell phones and accompanying service plans for those. Now, there are only a few ways all this is possible. First, as Americans, we carry a lot of debt. Second, there's some error in these numbers, which is possible. And finally, these are averages, where one household overspends and another underspends. And personally, I think point 3 provides most of the explanation. Money is flexible. It comes and goes easily, and where we overspend in one area, we can simply balance that out by underspending in another. That average family that's spending over $15,000 a year on car payments isn't necessarily representative of all households. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the true average was much lower because households with paid-for cars probably weren't even included in this data. And before I spend too much time arguing against the point I'm trying to make, let me point out that even if we tweaked several of these stats in one direction or another, it will remain abundantly clear that many households are simply spending far too much. And if we're looking to significantly reduce the amount we spend each month, the easiest way to do that consistently is to reduce the amount we spend on the largest items. So by focusing on housing and cars, we can get the biggest impact relative to the amount of effort and discipline we have to put forth to produce a meaningful change. In other words, housing and cars are only part of the problem, but they are a big part of the problem. Now, if you add up the amounts I've listed in the table, these two categories could account for 58% of household spending for the average American. In fact, if we revise the table so the amount spent on housing and transportation is capped at 30% of income, the total spent for these 6 categories falls to a much more palatable $58,295 per year. And the great thing is now we even have room to add insurance, entertainment, clothes, and cell phones again. Now, could we save money on groceries, utilities, and fuel? Sure. But you're more likely to let those costs creep up again, whereas a mortgage or a car are kind of locked in expenses. And besides, even if you trim those expenses until it hurts, they won't have the same level of impact as a reduced mortgage or a completely eliminated car payment. But most importantly, by spending less on these 2 items, we have something to set aside for retirement. And for me, that's the primary reason to keep your housing and transportation costs in check. The fact is, time is one of the critical components to building wealth, money being the other. If you're not able to save and invest early in your earning years, you'll pay for it when you're older and trying to play catch up. It's just a real quick example. If we take the difference between our $76,000 median income and our revised spending total at $6,585, and we invest that amount annually for 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50 years, here's what that would look like. As you look at the table and the chart, there are two primary points I want to make. First, things don't really get exciting on this graph until after year 40, but you can't get to year 40 without going through years 1 through 39. This means you have to start as early as soon as possible. The other point is $773,000 probably won't be enough to finance a very remarkable retirement. It may actually get you through, but 50 years from now, I don't know, it may not be enough. Now, no, I didn't account for inflation, but I also didn't assume that your contribution rate would increase over time. You can view this in today's dollars, and you should be able to contribute more as your income increases. But this is also why I don't recommend saving just $6,585 per year. Instead, I recommend saving at least 15 to 25% of your income each year for retirement. On a $76,000 annual income, this would be $11,400. Now, to contribute at that level, you need to cap the amount you spend on housing and cars at a combined 30%. Then, as your income increases but your mortgage stays the same, direct more and more of your income into retirement savings. Also, I recommend just paying cash for your cars and driving them as long as possible because cars are a financial killer. Limiting the cost of these two items really is a critical step to long-term financial success. Anytime I speak with someone about budgeting, this is where I focus first. Also, even though I recommend limiting your housing and transportation costs to 30% of your income, you do well to spend even less if you can. Houses and cars are huge commitments. The less of your income that's consumed by these two items, the more freedom you'll feel with your finances. So if you've made it this far in our video, I hope that means it's been helpful to you. If you would, please consider clicking like and subscribe below. That helps our channel to grow. It actually allows me to continue making content so I can teach people about personal finance. Also, we have plenty of information on our website at martinmoney.com, and our YouTube channel will have links to a lot of stuff down below in the description. We're grateful for your interest and your time watching our videos. God bless and take care.